topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. You know what? This morning, this is the first Wednesday in May, and I got to tell you that this is a very special show to me, and it's amazing how the Lord works. I got a phone call early this morning from a doctor's office who's interested in becoming an expert on our show. And somehow our expert who's coming on with us here in just a few minutes, his name came up. And they went on and on what a wonderful doctor, Dr. Eldred Taylor is. And that he is so important to the field of functional medicine, and just went on, and we shared a lot of things. This has become such an important show to us that we replay the show every week. We don't do that with any of our shows, but this is such an important show. Let me introduce you to our expert, my friend that I am so blessed to have on our show, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
Hey, how you doing, Steve?
How about that for an opening?
Hey, man, I appreciate that. That's funny that the guy called you today. Like I
right
told
before
you.
your show.
Yeah. So, what happens is that 10 years ago when I was doing conferences and speaking in person, a lot of doctors came and they, got that spark to say, hey, maybe I should try and do functional medicine. And so a lot of doctors may know me, and I may not necessarily know that person's name, but I may remember seeing them at a conference, or if they tell me, hey, I saw you in Seattle or whatever. So hopefully I've made an impact on
you did
positions. Well, and what I'm trying to do with this and with my podcast is to continue to create that impact. To be honest with you, when I was speaking and going around and flying around and staying in hotels, the stress burnt me out. And I'm supposed to be talking about stress, and I let stress burn me out. Yeah, I let it burn me out. So I kind of retreated for a little while and just did office work. And now when I see that I can sit in my basement and I can continue to make an impact, I'm like, okay, let me get started again. So that's why I'm happy that, I don't know, it was 3 years ago that you kind of said, hey, you want to do this podcast. And that kind of got me in the mood of, hey, I can still make an impact and I don't have to go anywhere. So yeah, I appreciate you even, bringing that up to me as a possibility about, being on this show. And it's
I believe the Lord had something to do with this. I always believe there's a reason for everything.
Yeah.
And Dr. Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
I tell you how important our show is, but just the fact that we replay your show every week just shows how important your show is. Now you have your own podcast. Tell people when your podcast is.
Yeah, well, hey, I just finished it. It's 9:00 and yours is at 10. And I told you because you gave me my start, I wasn't gonna throw you out with the baby with the bathwater. just because I started my own podcast. Yeah, it's called Ageless Blueprint. It's at 9 o'clock every Wednesday. And if you see there, I'll tell you what this is about. I just really talk about how the blueprint of how to have an abundant life has been around for ages. You can create a blueprint for your life, and the basics of that is timeless. They've been talking about the blueprint for life, to live a great life since 10,000 years ago and beyond. Everybody wanted to know the meaning of life and why am I here and what am I supposed to be doing. So that's what we talk about, is that ageless blueprint. And the other thing that I talk about is, my story is that I was raised in the home of a Baptist minister. So I have this spiritual part of me, but then I became a doctor, and then that's a lot of science and physiology and all of this stuff. So back in the 1600s, this doctor named Descartes, he said, hey, the body is separate from the spirit. The spirit will be handled by religious leaders, and the body is going to be handled by doctors. Well, I'm calling myself the spiritual MD because I don't believe that. I believe that the spirit affects the mind, and the mind affects the body. And so instead of just focusing on the body, I've kind of expanded my knowledge to say, how can I understand more about the mind? And in the past, we've talked about meditation. We'll continue to talk about meditation. And that's how you kind of connect your mind with the spirit, is through meditation, is by quieting your mind so you can actually hear what the spirit is saying to you. If you are constantly thinking about all of your problems and all of your issues, you can't be quiet enough to actually hear what the spirit is telling you. It's just, it's like in the Bible, it says, be still and know that I am God. You got to be still. And we always active and doing stuff. You have to be still so you can listen to that quiet voice that tells you what your purpose is. So that's what I'm trying to get people to understand, is that no, all of this is connected. Don't believe that whatever your mind thinks that your body doesn't react to. Because if you think you're sick, you're going to be sick. If you think you're going to die, and I'll tell you this, when a person loses their will to live, if you have some, and you probably have seen this, you have some relative or somebody you're close to, and they've been fighting this battle of cancer or some other, like a very serious illness. And as long as they have that spirit that they want to live, they will live. But when they lose that will to live, when they start thinking, I am going to die, might as well just get your black suit out, because they're going to die when they lose that will. So that's how your mind can affect your body. And I've seen it. I've seen it with my relatives. Okay, that once they lose that will to live, I start getting my black suit ready and start figuring out how I'm going to arrange my schedule to get to the funeral. So I didn't tell you what we're going to talk about, but on my last podcast, I talked about how people carry around these badges of honor to say, like, chronic fatigue and attention deficit. And I wanted to explain that most of that is caused by stress. But what I talked about then is that how a lot of times we think we have a diagnosis, but really it's only just describing our symptoms. And a lot of people carry that thought around, and they label themselves, and they begin to live that label. Do you understand what I'm saying? I can give you some examples. So
I want to know, what do you tell people, Dr. Taylor? How do you're absolutely right. When someone is so negative, this is going to happen, or, I call Debbie Downer. What do you say to those people to turn them around, to think more positive and not be so negative?
Hey, well, you know what? I tell you, I'm the spiritual MD or whatever, is that Job said, what I feared the most has come upon me. So if you focus on negative things, that is exactly what's going to happen to you. Okay. Is that
I agree.
It's when we talk about quantum physics and all this mind, stuff, whatever you think will be created in your reality. Okay. If you think there's going to be a negative outcome, by God, that's what's going to materialize. If you think that something's going to be positive, or if you can reframe, frame, FRAME, reframe something and frame it in a positive manner. You know how people say, a few years from now, we'll look back on this and we'll laugh about it. Well, what people say is laugh about it now. Don't wait 2 or 3 years. You
Yeah.
know that a lot, you know that a lot of things that you thought were awful 5 years ago, you're like, oh wow, hey, I'm glad that happened, because if that hadn't happened, this hadn't happened. So if you can reframe your thinking to say, hey, look, I know this seems bad right now, but I know in the future I'm gonna have learned something from this, and it's gonna help me in the future. So it's all about how you frame your circumstances, okay? And don't be a victim to what is happening right now, okay? Because the only way you can change tomorrow is you have to change what's going on today in your mind, okay? You can't predict the future based on your past, okay? You can't do that. Rebel, did we lose Steve?
Yes, it seems like he had to freeze a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that. So I guess I can just keep talking.
No.
So, oh, here he comes. Here he comes. All right, good. I thought you left us there for a while.
So, you talk about stress
Mhm.
and you talk about meditation.
Right.
First of all, you've written some books that people might not know about.
Yeah.
What are the
Well,
what are the titles of those books?
yeah. So we wrote a book called Are Your Hormones Making You Sick? Because being an OBGYN, I was supposed to know about hormones. But when my wife started having hormone issues, I figured out I didn't know much about hormones at all. Because what I learned about hormones was to give people birth control pills if they complain of anything and they're young. And if they're old, you give them estrogen or progesterone. Well, really, it was estrogen, it was Premarin. And you just gave them these pills. You didn't really try and figure out what was wrong. Well, what I learned is that you can measure hormones through saliva and you can balance them with natural hormones or bioidentical hormones. But then what happened is after about 2 or 3 years, we saw that some of these people would get better. About 20% of them, they'd still have all these issues. They were tired, they couldn't sleep, they had stomach issues, all this. And I started, when I was starting to speak at conferences about hormones, I heard these guys talk about stress and how important it was, and that how 75 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians are for stress-related complaints or disorders. So I'm like, wow, if I can focus on stress, I'm gonna be right 75 to 90% of the time with my patients. And by God, that's what happened, is that I focused on stress and I'm right 75 to 90% of the time. And that was a study back in 2002. I just asked ChatGPT to give me an updated impact of stress, and it says now it's over 90%. It's not 75 to 90. It's 90% of visits to primary care physicians are for stress-related complaints or disorders. So if I can fully understand stress, I can make a big difference in people's lives. And so that's been my primary focus. Now, I was talking about this 20 years ago, we wrote this book. Now people I see it all over the internet, people talking about stress and stress. My thing is you have to be able to measure it in order to manage it, okay? So it's not about, it is about therapy and all that stuff. That's all that stuff is great, and it's a big part of it. But also you need to understand, what has this stress done to you? What systems have been damaged due to stress? And stress causes damage in every system in your body, okay? And my job is to figure out what damage has been done, how to repair it, and how to prepare you for future stress. And also tell you how to get rid of the stressors, or if they're emotional stresses, you got to get rid of those. If you're in a bad relationship, you got to get rid of that, okay? But if there's some other stressor, like your hormones are out of balance or your gut is out of balance, then I have to help you get rid of that stress. And I have to help you repair the damage and help to teach you how to not let that stress re-enter. Okay. Is that even though we repair it, you've got to be prepared for future stress. So you can't go down that same road again that got you into this situation. Okay. So that's what came out of those two books is hormones and stress. And I'm going to tell you, if you understand those two, 75 to 90% or 90% of the issues that you're going to the doctor for would be resolved. Okay. If you could just fix those two. And I've seen it in my practice. And my goal through this platform and through ACES Blueprint and my school group is to educate people and empower them to take control of their health. You have to be your own health advocate. You have to filter everything you hear or see through your understanding to see if it's right for you. It's not a one size fits all. That is, in medicine, they have all these algorithms. If they have this, you do this. If they have this, you do that. You can't follow those algorithms. You have to understand the function of every system in your body. You don't have to understand it. Somebody has to understand, but you have to see how it all relates. And if you understand it, it's much easier to deal with the patient who understands what's going on with them instead of you just telling them to blindly do something. So I always want patients to understand. I tell them, don't ever do anything that you're not comfortable with. If you don't fully understand it and fully understand why you're doing it, then don't do it. I don't care if I tell you, I don't care if the chief of surgery at Mayo Clinic tells you. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Okay? And if you will honor that inner intuition, especially women have it, and men can have it if they understand it, is that intuition is trying to guide you, give you a blueprint of what you should and should not do.
You know what's amazing? Dr. Taylor, you went to one of the finest medical schools, one of the finest hospitals to do your internship and residency. And now in your practice, you are basically finding what doctors missed. I mean,
Here's
that's
what I'll tell
really what
you.
it comes
Yeah.
down to.
Mhm. Yeah. I lost you there for a minute. I know you said I went to Emory, and what was the final part of that?
I said you did your internship and residency at one of the finest hospitals, and now here you are. You got, you were an OB-GYN doctor for many years, but here you
Yeah.
are now. Patients come to you because the doctors couldn't find anything wrong with them, and you
Yeah.
find out what's actually causing their health issues.
Yeah. Because these people don't have diseases, they have dysfunctions. And I was taught to treat diseases. So when I was an OB/GYN, hey, you had an abnormal pap smear. Okay, that's a disease. Okay, I'll do, another pap smear. I'll do cryo where you freeze the. All right, you have big fibroids. Oh, all right. Well, I'll cut them out. Okay. But the real reason they have fibroids is because their hormones are out of balance. But I didn't know that. I just, if their fibroids got big enough, I go, oh, you're bleeding all the time. Well, let's just take the uterus out. Well, they're bleeding all the time because their hormones are out of balance. Okay. So I was taught to diagnose and treat diseases. And if you didn't have a disease, because even if you're bleeding all the time, I'm not going to really treat it unless your blood count gets so low. Then I'm going to give you more blood. Okay.
Right.
But the problem is your hormones are out of balance. Okay.
Yes.
So that's why doctors say, hey, I don't see anything wrong. You go year after year after year after year. And all the while you have a functional problem, but then it takes 5 years or so before it actually registers as a disease. So that's why you keep going for your yearly checkups. Oh, you do the routine labs. They do that. Oh, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. Then all of a sudden, oh, gosh, look at this. And they act like it happened last night. No, it was developing over the course of years, but because you weren't doing tests to identify dysfunction, you were only doing tests to identify disease, you never saw it. So I know that the doctor, if they've been to another doctor, I know they've done all the disease testing, So I don't even have to worry about do they have a disease because they've already ruled all that out. So now I can focus on dysfunction, and that dysfunction, 75 to 90% of the time, is going to be stress. So I do cortisol. I do saliva testing for hormones. 75 to 90% of the time, I'm right. And it's probably 90% of the time, okay? Because it's gotten a lot worse over the last 10 or 15 years since I've been talking about this.
Tell me what, because a lot of people don't even understand stress. They might
Yeah.
know they have it, but they don't understand it.
Yeah.
Tell
Hey,
people what
Mhm.
stress does.
Yeah, well, so here's stress. Stress is anything that throws your internal or external environment out of balance. Okay. So any disruption, okay, the temperature's too hot. Okay, your body's out of balance. It has to try and balance its temperature. And even though it's hot outside, it has to try and cool you down. So you start to sweat, you start to do all these things. So anytime your body is thrown out of balance, that is a stressor. All right. So it can be mental stress. Hey, you lost your job. Wow, your finances are out of balance. Okay, that's a stress. The problem is your body reacts to stress the same way no matter what it is. It manifests stress through the stress response, and that stress response is fight or flight. So you just lost your job and your body thinks that you're ready to run or fight. So now what happens? Your heart starts to race because it thinks you're starting to fight. Okay. Your body thinks I gotta shift blood to the muscles. So it shifts away from your gut. So now your gut's not getting the blood that it needs, so it doesn't work as right. It doesn't work right anymore. Your brain is saying you got to go straight off of instinct. So it takes some of the blood from that would go to your brain so that you could actually focus. And now it's saying, no, you got to pay attention to everything because you don't know where the danger is coming from. So you begin to be unable to concentrate. So that's what I was talking about on my podcast before. Now, if your body is constantly in this run mode, even though you're not running, you're going to get fatigued even though you haven't done anything. And that's chronic fatigue. And so I was telling you, is it a diagnosis or a description? Patients come in, they say, I'm tired all the time. They run all of these disease testing. They say your blood count is okay. This is okay. I don't know what's wrong with you. So they label you with chronic fatigue. Well, chronic fatigue is just a description because you came in and said, I'm tired all the time. And what
Right.
does chronic mean? Chronic means all the time. What does fatigue mean? It means tired. So you say, I'm tired all the time. And the patient says, and the doctor says, you have chronic fatigue. Well, they didn't tell you why you're tired. They just regurgitated what you said to them, but they put it in a fancy name. And you go around for the rest of your life saying, I have chronic fatigue. So that's why I can't work. That's why I can't take care of my children. That's why I can't do all this because I have chronic fatigue. But you
It's
label
never
yourself that,
treated
and you know
then.
what? It's never treated. So your body is going to keep staying in this fight or flight, and you're going to keep thinking, I have chronic fatigue. And you know what? You're going to have more and more and more fatigue because you have absorbed that label. I have chronic fatigue. What is attention deficit disorder? It means a patient comes in and says, I have trouble concentrating. I can't focus. Well, what is that? That's a deficit in your attention. Well, why do I have a deficit in my
Yeah.
attention? Okay. It's because you're in this fight or flight and you're looking around everywhere for the threat, and there's no threat there. So that's called panic attacks and anxiety disorders. Okay. So, I have another person says my gut, I have all this diarrhea, indigestion. It feels like my bowels are irritated. And what do they say you have? You have irritable bowel.
Yeah.
How many people have you
IBS.
heard? You told them your bowels are irritated, and then they say, yeah, your bowels
They're
are
just
irritated.
repeating it back to you.
That's just, and people go around and tell everybody, well,
Yeah.
they go to the restaurant. I have irritable bowel. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have irritable bowel.
But nothing is done about it.
Nothing's done about it. Okay. So why do you have irritable bowel? Because all of the blood flow has gone away from your gut. so it's not absorbing things. So you have diarrhea. You're not absorbing any nutrients, so you're tired. It all came from the stressors that you have. So it's. I used to give this lecture to doctors, and they would laugh at themselves. They were like, "Man, you're exactly right. I'm just repeating what the patient said." And so hopefully that doc who called you this morning started laughing at himself and decided to change. And that's what doctors have to do. And I talk about this on my podcast. We are taught see one, do one, teach one. Okay. So that's the rule in medicine. If you see a hysterectomy, then you're going to do a hysterectomy, and then you're going to teach a hysterectomy. But also, if you see somebody giving your patients, a higher level resident giving a patient birth control pills for a certain set of symptoms, then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to teach that. So that doesn't allow anything to change. That's why they tell you is that in medical school, they say 10 years from now, everything you have learned is going to be obsolete. Well, most docs hear that, but they never change. They never change. They're doing the same thing that they saw, did, and taught when they were a resident. And I've been out of my residency over 30 years. And thank God I had the sense to change how I thought about things, because as science develops, science is always expanding and it always has new knowledge. You have to be able to take that new knowledge and apply it and get experience with it. And then you can see how the old ways no longer serve you. And the old ways I was doing something didn't serve my wife. The old ways I was doing things did not serve my patients. So I had to change. And that's what I'm trying to get across to people.
Run out of time, but I got homework. I've got a homework assignment for you next time.
Okay.
We have gotten at least 7 people write us. People really trust you who listen to your show and really trust your word. These people want to know what you think about what RFK Jr. is coming up with about food. And I think we could possibly make that on our next show. This show is going to be repeated every Wednesday for the rest of this month, same time. And then your podcast is at 9:00 Eastern time on Wednesdays.
Yeah, and for right now, I'm doing it live, so it's not pre-recorded. If they want to ask questions, they can. The phone lines are open. Rebel is handling that. So yeah, every Wednesday morning at 9:00 on this same station, I can have the link for people who want to join in live. But also you can go to agelessblueprintpodcast.com, and all of my podcasts are there. agelessblueprintpodcast.com. And
your website also, you're at your clinic.
Yeah.
What is your website there?
Yeah, TaylorMedicalGroup.net. But what I really want you to join is my school group, school.com/ageless, SKOOL. And so please, I'm glad that you trust me. I promise you I'll always give you the down and dirty and what you need to know in order to take charge of your health.
People love your show. We'll see you next month. Maybe we'll talk about RFK Jr., what he's coming out with food products. We'll see you again.
Okay, I'll do my homework.
God bless you, doctor.
Okay. All right. See you guys.
That's Dr. Eldred Taylor. He's our functional medicine. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.